Hello and welcome. This is the 37th episode of the Wi-Fi Chats, the Wise Mind Fireside Chats. Joined today, Erika Nadeau, Gabby Sheshlock, and a very welcome return to Julien Reiss, who was one of our founding talkers, whatever we call ourselves, conversationalists. Let's go with that. So we are very, very pleased to have him back. Today's topic, we decided to talk about Fallout, which is a new Amazon MGM Studios TV show. It's trending. You might have seen or heard about it. And it came from Bethesda Games. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. One of the Americans that is listening or even in the room can tell us. Very, very
Accurate.
popular game. And the reason it's come up is because it is a classic example of Joseph Campbell's heroine's journey. So, for those that aren't aware, this is an event. You'll be familiar with it with most action movies, pretty much every book you've ever read. It's the core structure of how stories have historically been told. So, I'm not going to give any spoilers for Fallout, but think about something like Star Wars. You've got little farm boy Luke Skywalker, something calamitous happens, gets thrown out into the far reaches of the universe, goes through massive changes his values, his behaviors. And the question that came up from the TV show is quite simply, will you still want the same things when you have become a different animal altogether? So there it is. How do we change? What happens when these changes come upon us? Is the paradigm shift so great that we become an entirely different person? Over to you guys. Thank you.
I'll start as usual. I just jump right in here. I find it's an interesting question because what I'm asking myself is, I don't know. I won't know until I'm fully through my heroine journey to see where I wind up. But I've been through some journeys already. So I think who you are deep down, but some things might shift, like your priorities. And I think your values remain the same, but they may shift in order. What becomes more important, more of a priority for you. So I don't know that there's still something deep down that keeps you who you are, but there are different iterations of yourself as you mature, as you learn, as you survive, whatever it is that journey has taken you on. So I don't know if it's a different animal altogether. There definitely is some shift. I think if there is no shift, I'm not sure what the journey was about to begin with.
There's this saying, isn't it? I'm never the same, but I'm always myself. We're just with us and certain values. And I don't think mine has ever changed. Maybe new ones added to it, maybe one or two not so important anymore. So different values were probably more prevalent when I was a 20-year-old, and now they have shifted in list of priority now that I'm almost 60, right? So they shift, they change, we learn, we have new experiences, but the core ones are still the same. I'm absolutely, I love freedom. I'm fiercely independent. So those are two, for examples, who never ever changed. I like adventure and I like to be creative. That never changed either. So it didn't matter what life did throw at me and what journey I went through. And that's really what a hero's journey is, isn't it? You start out at a point, something happens, you have to fight through this adversity, and then in the end, you have a conclusion, you come around. So it didn't matter which journey I went through, those always stayed the same. They never really changed, at least for me. So I'm
Yeah, I
always
think
changing, but I'm always the same in a way. It could be another way to say.
I think there's also an interesting perspective in biology as our cells change. Our body is not the same body than it was 14 years ago. All the cells have been replaced. Most of them, only immunitary cells and some brain cells and some specific stem cells and stuff like that remains, but all the rest completely changed. So I think there is a lot of change that we can make, even through our biology, and we can adapt. But there's also this feeling like to come back to psychology and relationship. I feel like if you still with the same people than you were 14 years ago, that probably means that you didn't evolve a lot, or you restrain yourself to grow. Or you put yourself into a box and you stay in that box. So not sure it's a good thing. People who say, yeah, I'm still the same, I remain the same, I haven't changed. Are you proud of it? So that's one point. And the last one is also when I see myself as a whole, both of you shared, there's a core stuff that hasn't changed. But I think we always observe ourselves in a slice of the present moments. But we don't have the capacity, not easily, to see ourselves as a whole from the beginning to the end. And I think if we should be more aware of that.
It raises an interesting point. There's that saying that a man can't stand in, or a woman can't stand in the same river twice. But is it even the same person standing in the river? And I'm getting the feeling from the conversation that we think maybe not. And it doesn't matter what kind of literature, art, even in pop music, Pink has a lyric, I'm still the same girl, I've just changed all the chains for pearls. Well, you're not the same person then, are you? Because you've got a different take on what your style or what you consider a luxury to be. As a young man, I was all about being out in the woods and the wilds and camping and being adventurous. The idea of spending a night under canvas now, frankly, I've had enough of that. I'm quite good with a nice pillow. So if character and virtues, values are constants, what are maybe the traits or the drives, the goals that change?
Maybe the reactive part. You react to something like, oh, when I behave this way, I don't get what I want. Like a simple childhood mindset. I think we all have a little bit of that. When it's too much, it's becoming like a narcissistic person. But I think we still have, all of us, an healthy amount of it. And just to adapt our behavior in front of what happened. And I think this reactive part can change. And we have to be really aware of that. You don't go in a direction that we don't want just because we're manipulated to this direction with the news when they want to make fear and anger, whatever feeling they want to produce. We are influenced by that. And I think that can be easily changed. And perspective and opinions also. And flavor, as we get enough, as you said, when you get enough sleeping in the woods, it's not that you're not adventurous anymore. It's just that you had enough. But maybe it's also biology, because being adventurous is mostly because men have testosterone that push them to be adventurous, and with age is declining. So is it something like that, or?
Steady on there, fella. That's fighting talk.
And personally, I still would love to stay out in the woods and sleep in a tent, but my back is firmly against it. Sleeping on the ground means 2 days of suffering afterwards. So body changing, getting older also determines how, but it's how we live our life, right? What we do, we change over time, we adapt to our bodies getting older. This is how we live our life. But it doesn't mean that our virtues and values have changed, right? So I'm adventurous these days in a different way. I'm not sleeping in woods anymore on the floor, right? Because I physically can't, but I'm adventurous in a different way. I also hopefully got a little bit wiser over time. So while I was young, I didn't really care much about security. Now that I'm going to retire and no, I can't probably work until I'm 90. I have to get wise about my finances, how I do it, and I actually can survive in case I live until 90 and I'm not homeless on the street. So the values have changed. That's what I meant with the change, right? Because we grow older, we grow wiser. We realize, hold on, I have to look after myself. I can't be as reckless than I probably was in my youth in a way. That's important. And do we change? Because the first question was, if we go to a hero's journey and we have adversity, do we actually change? Do we change in the end what we actually want? And I don't think so, because what do we want in the end of the day? We want to be safe. We want to have connections. We want to have friends, close relationships, bit of safety. I think this stays still the same. And if you look at some of the, even talking about videos or movies, right? If you see the heroes who went through a journey, if they do a sequel, they're usually somewhere living nice, relaxed, planting a few crops, and then something comes along and there's adversity, and then they need to pick up the sword again and fight the bad people again. So even in the movies, it seems that the writers come to the conclusion, I go back to a nice quiet life until there's some threat to the universe, and then they come out again with their swords, right?
I'm sitting here reading the question the way Alex said it. Will, in the end, will you still want the same things if you're entirely different? And how do I say this? In some of my own journeys, right? My own journey of becoming my own heroine, whatever you want to call that. There were things that I thought I wanted before I would get on that journey, right? I want approval. I want people to like me. I want to not be judged, all of that nonsense. And then you go on this journey, or multiple journeys, if it takes you multiple journeys to get there. And you come out the other side, having survived, and you take a look and you wonder, do I really still want? No, it has shifted. I don't want everybody's approval. I don't need everybody's approval. I think that in the end, that I have developed a elevated sense of discernment that I didn't have before some of those journeys had to happen in order for me to even ask myself that question and understand that I can decide to want something different, and it's okay, right? I don't want a million people to be my friends. I don't need everybody to be my friends. So it changes who you are going forward, knowing that, operating at a different frequency, not trying so hard to get people to like you, right? So I think there is some change that happens. I haven't changed. My values are still the same. I'm honest, I'm trustworthy, I'm reliable. Those things are important to me in the way that I want to be, but I can decide what do I want because of that. So I think there is some shift that happens, personally, for me anyway.
That was a beautiful example, because this is part of getting wiser, isn't it? We still want friendships and connections. That's still the same. But when we were young, we thought everybody needs to like us and everybody has to approve of me. But now we go like, nah, I have my good friends and I don't care about the rest. That's the wisdom coming in, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think that part, sorry, go ahead, Alec.
Go on.
No, just part of that learning is it's less about everybody else liking me and approving of me and more about me liking and approving myself, which gets me to focus more on what are my values and how do I want to show up? What is important to me? That only comes though when you go through the journey and try and survive the journey.
And with the heroine's journey, it's a storytelling tool that brings us hopefully some wisdom and some entertainment, and maybe even expresses a moral or something. But it's a story. It's the difference between mythos and logos, that which is fantasy, that which is true, however you want to say true as a measurement. But particularly what you, Erika, and Gabby were just talking about brings us very much to modern applied psychology, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the journey of self-actualization. And they're actually real and tangible things that we engage with. We want to be safe. We want to have connection and social inclusion. And then obviously the revised version talks about self-actualization and becoming the best version of ourselves that we are able to be. And I'm fairly sure we've agreed in previous conversations that that version is always going to be incomplete, because unless we suddenly stop and say, yep, that's it, this is the best I can be. And I know one of you will say, well, that's a bit of a fixed mindset. So I'm never going to have the opportunity to just sit still and think this is the best I can be.
Was trying to find the name because I had the name out of my mind, but there were a student from Mr. Jung, probably heard of this one, and he had a student that helped him to write most of his work. How it is with PhD, it's like the guy below you that do the shitty work, and then you combine it and you publish a book and you get an award of it, and I'm a great guy. And we were talking about the Women's Day, so I'm gonna talk about a female student of Jung. She was talking about the puer aeternus, It's in Latin, which means the forever child. And she labels that a fake paradise that many people get stuck in when they have wish and feelings from the youth and they don't want to evolve and escape from that. Women who pretend to be independent, but still behave like a little girl in front of their man. I'm sure one of us like that. I'm a grown woman. I'm 40 years old, and then when you watch her with her boy, she's having daddy issues, or she's just not taking responsibility. Not only men, not only women. Many men also don't take responsibility, but grown adults that doesn't take responsibility, for me, is like a sign of being childish and being stuck in that paradise where you can dream whatever you want, you can achieve whatever you want, you can be whoever you want. If you want to, even if you want to label yourself as a zebra or as a unicorn, whatever you want, everything is possible. So that's fun when you're below 10, confidence, explore the world and all that. But then, as Erika said, you grow with discernment and you become more mature, you take responsibility, you project yourself in future, and you organize a little bit. So I think that she had a lot of great work on that, and I invite you to check on it.
Thank you. Perhaps we can include the link in the comments or the description. It's interesting because you mentioned also earlier narcissism, and in Buddhism, there's the three, just in Buddhism, but the three toxic traits: nihilism, narcissism, and narcotism, and that also plays into wisdom and discernment, because particularly young people, they go through this existential crisis of there's no reason to have anything or do anything, it's all going to come to an end. Then there's this period of narcissism where some people believe that they then are the center of all things, and then we sometimes have the numbing down and the not wanting to deal, all of which are very dysregulated, irresponsible kind of behaviors, the kind of things that I suppose through our heroine journey we're actually rallying against. Any thoughts?
I'm reflecting on your nihilism, all the three things that you just pointed out and the stages that they come in. And honestly, this doesn't mean it didn't happen, but in my conscious memory, I don't really have memory of feeling that as a youth, as a young person. I never struggled with feelings of what's the point, kind of that teenage angst that goes on. So I remember I had a conversation with my son when he was probably 16, and he's going on about this. He had just been introduced to the idea of nihilism and getting into it. And I remember feeling like, what are you talking about? What do you mean nothing has a point? We had a whole discussion on our way to McDonald's this one day about nihilism. And in my adult parent mind, I had to have enough awareness to not allow, oh my God, my kid sees no point in life. I can lose my shit over it and just allow the conversation to happen. But personally, I really can't connect with that as a youth, because I remember feeling, I don't want to say it was like Pollyanna or anything. Oh, everything is joyful and happy or whatever, but I don't remember suffering from that, feeling pointless and hopeless. Maybe not until I was older, yes. So maybe I was a little out of order with the way that these stages worked for me, but I remember feeling all three of those things at one time. That's a fun place to be.
Can you be at the three places at the same time? Can you be nihilist, narcotic, and narcissist and centered to yourself?
I think so. It sort of looks like, well, what's the fucking point? Nothing matters. Is it that my life is terrible? It's all about me, and I'm just going to give up right now. There it is, all in a nutshell.
Well, thankfully, you've been on a bit of a journey since you were there. Any closing thoughts on this, what it means to change and alter on our journeys through life?
I just want to point out that I thought it was lovely that we talk about the heroine or hero's journey, and Erika has a Superwoman cup she's drinking from. So yeah, I think for me, the main thought really is that we're always progressing, we're always in movement. So maybe the hero's journey, the way it's portrayed, even in movies, is also a little bit of a fantasy story. I don't think it's so clear cut, because we're always in movement. Right? There's never a time in our lives where we go to pasture for a year or 2 years and everything is hunky-dory. So the way I think our brain works, that we have a beginning, a middle, and an end, the way we even see our lives with what happened to us in our life journeys, I sometimes find that I probably have learned more about myself in the times where everything was actually steady rather than the big up and downs. But we don't think of the steady years. We don't really. If you think back all the years, there's probably periods in my life where I go, what did I do in those 10 years? Because nothing special happened, right? So does it mean I didn't grow in those years or I didn't learn anything those years? Of course not. So maybe sometimes we're too focused on this kind of tragic kind of life stories. And you see it when we meet new people in ecology and they want to work, say, as a practitioner, and they say, but I have nothing, I'm an authority, and nothing has happened in my life, because they think in these big terms, right? We always think about these big terms, but we learn all the time, even without a traumatic hero journeys story. I think that's my takeaway.
Awesome. Anything from anybody else, or shall we bid our listeners? Go on,
I will
Erika.
just say this, coming off of what Gabby just said, that we talk about it in terms of hero and heroine, right? So you think of things like this, and you think of the Marvel movies where something's about to blow up the universe and we have to go save it. It's not always some epic, major thing that you might be on a journey in. It could be just any of life transitions that happen to us that cause us to shift from one thing to another. And the journey itself might not be slaying a dragon and rescuing anybody. It's just, you could be your own hero in your life transition there. And the ultimate goal is a shift in some way in your perspective, in your thinking, in your behavior, or finding meaning about something that happened to you so that you don't remain stuck in it. I think as simple as that is what a hero's journey is. I don't have to slay a dragon or kill a multi-dimensional being to be considered a hero. And I can be my own. I don't have to rescue anybody else in the process.
I think that might be a bit of a mic drop. Thank you. All of our contact details are, as ever, in the description, and we will be back for another episode soon. Take care for now.